What's going on, everybody? Nicholas Natt, and you are tuned into the Natt Fitness Method Q&A portion. Your host, myself, as well as my co-host here, the man usually behind the camera but in front of the camera, West Post. You got questions, we've got answers.
All right, starting off today, we got an anonymous question off of Facebook. I was wondering, I'm 17 years old. I've been going to the gym for about a year or so. Work out about 4 to 5 days a week. I usually take a fat burner every 2 hours before I work out. I was wondering if it's bad to mix those fat burners with a pre-workout.
I'll answer this in two different segments because I think the important piece here is to definitely understand what's happening on a safety tip as well as from an ergogenic aid maximization standpoint. If you guys aren't familiar, ergogenic aid is basically a fancy word for supplements. You probably don't want to insult your body or your adrenal system by putting in too much caffeine. And so what I would definitely recommend is first not supplementing with a fat burner. 2 hours, I think at that point you've really lost the benefit, right? And so I'm not sure what fat burner out there encourages people to take it 2 hours in advance. It's probably pretty potent, or you're probably misusing it. What I would recommend is that your fat burner is probably going to be optimized between about 30 minutes of going into the workout. Okay, so stacking that with the pre-workout. A lot of the benefits that people like behind a pre-workout are the caffeine, the buzz, the pump, things like that. And so if you're in a position where you want to get the benefits of a pre-workout, such as beta-alanine or citrulline, some of the things that can definitely help with blood flow, optimization, recovery, stuff like that. But you're concerned about the caffeine, what I would do is I would actually take the fat burner the same time you take the pre-workout, and then I would just use a pre-workout that doesn't have caffeine in it. Allmax has got a brand in there. I know a couple other supplement companies have a brand. Theirs is actually called Pump. It just came out. It does no caffeine in that, and so it's nice because you're kind of getting the best of both worlds. The stimulants, which are really great for optimizing fat burn, like caffeine from the fat burner, but then you're also being able to get all the other benefits from the pre-workout from a performance standpoint, and you're not overdoing the actual, you're not overusing the stimulants. So that's how I would mediate that.
Next one from the newsletter, an email address with an M. Gilmer. They say, I'm 15 and a half years old and 190 pounds at a little above 6'1". I play football, and so my coaches value the squat. At the beginning of the season, I originally maxed out at 300 pounds. I maxed out this week, and my squat hasn't gone up at all. How can this be? I do squats usually 3 times a week with plyometrics on Saturdays, and I do 5x5 on squats.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so here would be my recommendation, because there's a lot here, right? You have this guy who's 15 years old, which means that he's still obviously growing. It means he hasn't even hit his potential. So the fact that he's already moving within that realm of like 300 pounds for a PR is not bad, right? It's pretty good. I think the problem is that what I did here, and correct me if I'm wrong, he's squatting 3 times a week and he's wondering why he's not PRing, right?
Correct.
Or going up. Okay, so there is such thing as overtraining. Overtraining would be either doing something way too frequent and not allowing your body to actually have an optimal recovery, or you have a very inadequate or very inefficient just nutrition source, right? And so people who are oftentimes, playing sports and they're just like, I feel like I'm burning out. Why is that happening? I think it's really coming from 2 things. You're not getting good rest, or you're not getting proper nutrition. Now, whether it's coming because you're not properly eating, or you're not eating enough, or you're not getting the right substances, or probably a combination thereof. In this case, I think that this athlete is overtraining because squats are a very strong compound movement, right? It's a full kinetic chain, and so it requires so many different muscle groups in the body. And if you're truly doing a 5x5, which is essentially a hypertrophy modality, you're really trying to focus on getting as much as you can within those 5 repetitions, and then maybe only incrementally moving up in the weight to get the other 5 reps on another, right? So the weight's really heavy. You're not trying to do multiple repeated reps like in a strength set, which can be between 10 and 12 repetitions. I think if you're not seeing that increase, it's because you're hitting the squats way too hard and your body and your central nervous system is just tapped. What I would recommend is actually moving moving through tracking the numbers, 5x5, 3x10, whatever it is that you're doing, and doing that on whatever set of weeks or however frequent you're training. Make sure you're giving yourself adequate rest. At max, I think you should be squatting twice a week, and that should be very, extended times. Don't worry about your PR. I know a lot of people use that as a metric to be able to see if they're getting stronger. Trust the process, put your efficacy and your confidence in the food and in your training. And what will happen is in like a month's time, when you go under the squat rack, you're going to notice a substantial result because now your hips, the joints aren't fatigued, the muscles have the glycogen they need to be able to push the weight, and you can actually go in there and test yourself with confidence. I think if you're trying to PR too frequent or you're just trying to squat 3 times a week because you're thinking more is better, you're actually shooting yourself in the foot because that's not always the case. In this case, you're actually doing more harm because you're not giving your body and your central nervous system adequate time to recover.
Thank you for that, Mr. Gilmer. Moving on to one of our friends who's submitted questions before, an awesome guy, Mr. Dan Mackey.
Daniel McIntosh.
He says, does anyone have the knowledge to explain why I look my best 1 week after my diet ends and I've been eating like garbage?
Okay, so essentially what happens is that, oftentimes you guys might be in a position where you've heard this before. People get on a diet either for a show because they want to drop weight, they just want to be healthier, and they're only used to eating certain foods, right? Typically higher protein diet foods, super clean, a lot of vegetables. If they are doing carbohydrates and fats, which I do recommend, they're probably tapered on. The carbohydrates are only probably getting them around super high physical activities, like before a workout, after a workout, things like that. So if you're in a position where you're going, I look a certain way, right, off of the diet, and now I'm eating garbage, which I'm assuming is probably days after, and then you're just, plumped up and yoked. I think that's really happening for really 2 things. One, what you have to understand is if you're tapering from a diet, you're usually coming from a very fasted state. It means that the cytoplasms inside the cell are just like hungry, and now you're in a position where your body is actually putting in adequate food. Those cytoplasms are going crazy, and you're just overfilling the cell, and it's blowing up, and now you have all this size, and you're like, do I look like a titan? How come I can't sustain this right now? I think the other thing to remember is that the only reason that you have that incredible surge in that pump, which is also probably coming from some of the other nutrients like the sodium and stuff like that, is because those cytoplasms in your body is actually at a very lean body fat percent. If you want to keep that pump, I think it's important that you remember the very thing that got you lean in the first place was the diet. So why it's great to put some sort of a balance between the body and make sure that you're getting good food. I think the worst thing that you can do is just look at yourself and say, oh crap, I'm getting yoked eating these high sodium or processed meals, and I'm going to keep that, because eventually what's going to happen is your body's not going to be anabolic, it's actually going to be catabolic. You're going to begin to lose some of that muscle, and then your body's going to be primed to store fat. Make sure that you're not only feeding the body proper, adequate nutrition, and make sure that you're able to sustain and continue dropping the body fat percent, but then when you are getting in good refeeds or cheat meals, put a workout around that. Either go in, waffles, pancakes, whatever you want to do, burger, or some sushi. That's a big thing. My coach is a big fan of that. And then go crush it under a squat rack or a deadlift day, or go do one of the workouts that you like after eating, because that food is going to be directly associated to replenishing the body, and that's going to have a much bigger effect. And I think you'll kind of find balance between what I think I'm getting from this, the aesthetics that you like of having the filled muscle cells, as well as on the flip side, making sure that you're staying lean, you're not killing the very thing that's making you successful.
So this next question is in response to the Natt Fitness method we did with Anthony Leonard, his video about CBD and its benefits and its involvement with fitness. He says, what about just in general smoking weed before bed? We had talked about CBD before bed to help, but he was wondering, it's Colorado culture. What about smoking weed before bed?
You have somebody here who's basically talking about smoking weed before bed. Here would be my thought process behind that. To each their own. If you're not a weed smoker, clearly just don't do it. If you like to experiment and smoke flower or you vape or you do any of that stuff, and that's kind of what you want to do. What I think I would recommend and understand is that what you're really looking for regarding the sleep is proper circadian rhythm cycles, and so that's moving from your alpha wave into your beta, into your gamma, and then through the non-rapid eye movement sleep. Eventually you want to get to delta, which we call the dream state sleep. And what ends up happening is that people are taking these pills, right? And they're sedating themselves, but you're not actually moving through that, which means that you're not getting sleep. You're just basically immobilized. You wake up and you understand why you wonder why you're so tired. You ponder, why does my body feel like this? I feel like I'm kind of in this limbo. And the reality is that that's happening because you actually haven't moved through the cycles, okay? I think smoking weed, because it's natural, actually would help. My benefit, my argument would be that I think, and I could be wrong, so don't quote me on this, but I know that Anthony says in the video, CBN, right? CBN is one of the endocannabinoids. It's probably very common in the flower. I think that will definitely help. And I think that CBD is one of the powerful caveats that assist with helping move people naturally through a circadian rhythm. And so I think that those two would be more powerful. And so if you're looking to optimize sleep, you probably want to go research the endocannabinoid CBN and look at those two, maybe CBD and the effects. If you want to experiment, mix some of the endocannabinoids, such as taking some, and again, to be clear, the endocannabinoid that we're talking about with marijuana is called THC. If you want to experiment with some THC, some CBD, some CBN, and find out what works for you, by all means, I think that would be a lot more long-term empowering than just smoking weed before bed, because I don't really know what kind of effects, from a lack of experience, what that would actually create, what that would actually yield.
All right, I mean that makes sense. The sleeping part, as long as you're tracking your sleep rhythms. There are a lot of apps out there that do that for you. You can, if you're recognizing it doesn't affect you, or it maybe increases that for you, maybe it's something that you do. But definitely, I think revert to data. Data is going to be your friend for that one, for sure.
In the long term, data won't usually fail you.
From Catherine Palep-Chan, she's asked us questions before too, so thank you for coming back and giving us some other content to work from. Catherine asks, would it be more beneficial to do strength training before bed or after waking up?
Okay, so I think if okay, so this is actually a great question. So I'll tell you what science really has shown and then kind of go from there. So if you can get up and you can begin to incorporate blood flow, anything that's going to generate blood flow, like going in and crushing a workout, it's going to maximize the rest of the day. Your BMR, which stands for basal metabolic rate, it's how many calories you burn just being who you are on a day-to-day, that's going to skyrocket, right? That's going to go through the effing roof, right? I think on the other end of that, you also get the sense of accomplishment through the day. It's done, and then what happens is in the workout, you have a peak of cortisol, which is actually going to happen. And what's nice is because you voluntarily have put that cortisol at a peak, it doesn't mean that other things in life aren't going to happen that are going to be stress yielding. I just think that you're going to be a lot less receptive and a lot less reactive in cortisol. You're going to have a lot more stability within the insulin. Your body's going to be ready to focus on trying to process that glycogen. Okay, so getting up in the morning, I think, is between the two of them going to be better. If you work out late, what ends up happening is, again, assuming that you're actually going through, you're doing the workout to full capacity, the best of your ability. This isn't just something that you're doing at a very nonchalant or very frivolous level. Your heart rate is going to skyrocket, which means you're going to voluntarily put yourself into a fight or flight response, aka you're going to put yourself in a sympathetic nervous response. We know that cortisol, we know that adrenaline, we know that noradrenaline are all hormones that you need that are going to help you optimize the workout. The problem is that those aren't the best when you're trying to kind of put yourself back into rest digest, what we call parasympathetic, where you're trying to actually shut it down, get ready for sleep. And so for that reason, I don't necessarily recommend working out late. In the end, workout. Working out is going to be so much better for you than not working out. So I would recommend working out earlier in the day above working out later in the day prior to bed. But above all, I would definitely position workout as a priority that must and should happen amongst not doing it just because it might be a workout an hour or 2 hours before you're going to bed.
Nice. That's a great point. I mean, usually I work out right after work, and you know I do sense like I do get this psychological challenge going on where it's like it's been a long day, it's hard, and you know I'm trying to like emotionally and psychologically dial down a little bit, and it's hard to like build your body up for a workout. Whereas in the morning, you know you have nothing that's torn you down yet, so it's all about just hitting it hard. You know, it's just about making sure that you prioritize your schedule so you can fit that in.
Yeah, we're going to be trying to program a Natt fitness method with an expert. I don't want to name drop right now because the person hasn't yet committed, but the point is that we're going to be talking about morning rituals, right? And I think morning rituals really being that of which what can be something that can help me optimize my day, that can really help you get yourself into the right permanent sense of mind. But I will go ahead and leak this. Working out is one of them. Physical activity with the position of blood flow is definitely one of them. It's one of the hacks to ensure that your day is probably going to go a lot better.
Her question was a two-part question. We tackled the first part. The second part is when working out, and I'm assuming this is like if you got a schedule going on and you're consistently working out, is a dinner high in protein and carbs better, or do you suggest dinner is higher in protein and carbs? Or I guess is there a balance? Or?
Excellent question. Like a workout has happened earlier in the day, or especially if you just finished a workout, then you're probably going to want to feed your body a good balance of macronutrients and making sure that you're getting good protein and you're getting good carbohydrates. Okay, rarely do I ever enforce people just getting one source. For that reason, I would definitely recommend some form of carbohydrate. If you're trying to focus on losing weight, I would really make sure that the carbohydrates you're using are a lot of complex carbohydrates. You're using a lot of vegetables, so getting into your zucchini, getting in your broccoli, getting in a lot of spinach, mushrooms if you don't have an allergy or if you like mushrooms, things like that. I think are going to be so much better for you because those nutrients working through the small intestine are going to stabilize insulin, and it's going to make sure that you're also getting in the carbohydrates to formulate the body. If you're trying to gain weight or if you're just coming directly off of a workout, you probably don't want to have too many complex carbohydrates. You probably want to focus on a lot more of a mixture of simple or at least somewhat higher glycemic carbohydrates. So getting in some of the other ones, maybe like rice or potatoes, would not be so harmful, again, as long as you're supplementing that. I think really there's no right or wrong with that. It's really just understanding your goal and really what direction you're moving towards, because it can be a very frustrating and compound head-banging activity if you're working very consistent at doing the right thing, but the right thing is really the wrong thing you should be doing.
That's all this week. Thank you so much for your questions, and please do not forget to continue to ask. These are all great questions, things that I think a lot of other people in the world, believe it or not, are having the same problems with. So don't be afraid to ask. Submit questions to any of Nick's social media outlets. His
platforms are listed here below. Definitely, obviously, feel free to submit on the newsletter, i.e. Wes likes to pull from the newsletter more. And again, if you guys have requests to remain anonymous, come and put your questions out there. A lot of these are fitness questions, which you guys can definitely see. We got a lot of lifestyle questions, just hacks for people as a whole to try to figure out how to be healthier, how you can optimize something. Those questions are more than welcome. Love to hear about those as well.
All right, until next time, you guys have a good night.